Goodra VSTAR is one of my personal favorite decks. I love the playstyle where it focuses a little more on defense than offense. It's even seen some success here and there, having won at least one regionals, and it's done well in the online scene here and there. However, Goodra VSTAR has kind of fallen out of the meta, at least in this Paradox Rift / Paldean Fates meta, and I'm kind of hopeful that Goodra VSTAR is going to be better post-rotation. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's look at some tier lists and deck lists for Goodra VSTAR that I found in Japan. There are some notable losses to Goodra VSTAR, but I don't necessarily think these are the end of the world. Battle VIP Pass going away does suck. It does make it harder to get the Goodras on the board. We do sort of have a substitute for that, but it's not going to help us get Goodra in play easier. Raihan is kind of a disappointment losing that because it let you attach an energy from your discard pile and then grab a card of your choice after one of your Pokemon got KO'd, but we no longer have that, and we are losing a switch option and escape rope. However, Goodra VSTAR does gain a lot of new cards, and I think overall this could be a net positive for the deck. Buddy Poffin is more for the Lost Zone variants of Goodra VSTAR, where you can search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less and put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. This is going to be your way to get the Comphase in play, but you're not going to be able to get Goodra in play. I guess theoretically, if you have a Ditto in your deck, you could use to get a Ditto, then put Ditto in the active on turn 1, then switch it to Goodra, but more often than not, this is going to be used to get your Comphase in play. Prime Catcher is also here, and some Goodra variants will use this, particularly the Lost Zone ones, where you get to switch your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot, and if you do, you get to switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So an item-based gusting option is very cool. Also kind of acts out as a switch out for the Lost Zone variants of the deck. Could use it to just kind of cheese your way into an extra Comfey flower selecting, on top of just being a gusting option to knock out something from the bench. But in any case, Prime Catcher, still a great card and definitely worth considering in Goodra. Emergency Board is more for the Lost Zone side than some of the other variants we're going to look at. This gives you a retreat cost of 1 less. And now this isn't really going to help Goodra retreat because Goodra is really heavy, but the Comphase are going to benefit greatly from this because then they have a free retreat. Hero's Cape is definitely tantalizing in Goodra VSTAR, giving Goodra an extra 100 HP on top of being able to tank an extra 80 damage. This can make Goodra incredibly difficult to knock out. Last but not least, Mist Energy, and this is such a good buff to Goodra VSTAR because certain decks like Roaring Moon and Giratina VSTAR are currently gatekeeping Goodra out of the current meta because of those one-hit KO moves like Star Requiem and Frenzied Gouging. But with Mist Energy here, we can completely negate the effects of attacks like the ones I just mentioned and be able to hang around even longer. Now let's start with some lists, and we're going to go and look at this first place Lost Zone variant first. And as we can see, Lost Zone variant, we've got a lot of the usual cards we would get, such as a Comfey, Cramorant, Sableye, Greninja in here as well. We have a 2/2 line of Goodra, which is standard issue for a Lost Zone Goodra deck. Really, realistically, we only want to set up one Goodra VSTAR and then use the other attackers to fill in the gaps. So we have a 2/2 line here, which is fine. There might be some instances where you want 2 Goodras, but most of the time you just want 1. We have 1 Zamazenta here, which is a great single prize attacker, can do upwards of 220 damage if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on the previous turn. And then we have an Iron Bundle here for a little bit of disruption. Basically acts as a one-way escape rope where your opponent has to switch out their active Pokemon with something else. For trainer cards, we've got the Colress's Experiment of course. For gusting, we've got Boss's Orders and Counter Catcher. For hand disruption, we've got Roxanne and Iono. We don't have any Buddy Poffins in this particular list, which I found kind of interesting. I think because so many of the Pokemon are above 70 HP, it really just benefits the Comphase. This player's opted to just go for Nest Ball. I think I would probably still try and squeeze in at least 2 Buddy Poffin in here to get the Comphase out a little more consistently, but that's more of a personal decision. We have only 4 Switch cards. Now, only 4 Switch cards, no Jet Energy, no Switch Cart. That kind of freaks me out a bit. I personally would like to see this count go up a bit, but it did win the tournament. So 4, I probably wouldn't go. I personally would go more than 4. 4 is probably the absolute floor of what you can get away with. Of course, we got our Mirage Gates, Super Rods, Poke Gears to try and get the Colruses a little more easily. Some new cards here. We've got the Prime Catcher and the Emergency Board, and that kind of helps offset the lack of switch cards in this particular build. And a couple of interesting techs here, including TM Devolution, can help us out in some of those stage 2 matchups, like a Gardevoir, like a Charizard. And then we also have Crisis Punch here, which is a very cool tech in this deck, where for 3 colorless energy, you do 280 damage, and only works if your opponent has 1 prize card remaining. You could put it on Goodra, but you could also put it on Cramorant, which doesn't need any energy to use this attack because of its Lost Provisions ability, which is really nice. We also have Defiance Band so that Goodra can do a little extra damage if we are behind on prizes, and that means we're doing 230 instead of 200. Can one-shot a bunch of basic EXs and Vs as well, so really nice there. And then our usual energy counts, 432, and then 2 missed energy to protect ourselves from the donks from Giratina and Roaring Moon. Example 2 is another take on the Lost Zone concept, but there are a couple of big differences here. The first one being Mimikyu, with that Safeguard ability, prevents all damage from Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. It gives you a little more time, like if your opponent can't gust around it and they're playing a V or EX based deck, which the meta is mostly comprised of at this point, Mimikyu can stall for a turn while you get the more cards in the Lost Zone and get your Goodras set up. We also see Buddy Poffin has made this list here, and we also see they've got a couple more switch cards. I like that. We've got 2 switch and 2 switch cart. Now keep in mind, switch cart does not work on Goodra VSTAR, but generally speaking, 6 switch cards is more to my liking. Otherwise, yeah, we've got the 2-1 split, so still 3 gusting cards, but 2 boss, 1 counter catcher, which is fine. We only have 1 hand disruption card in Roxanne, also fine. 4 nest ball, again, to get these bigger basics down. And then the Buddy Poffins, yeah, 3 of those. Maybe I'd cut that to 2. Emergency Board is here. And then the big addition here as well is that Hero's Cape, giving Goodra an extra 100 HP, making it a 370 HP monster. This third list is an Arceus-based build, and Arceus Goodra was a popular way to play Goodra back in the day. Still looks to be effective going forward. Arceus V and V-Star are just such good Pokemon. Arceus V can power up Goodra on turn 1 with Trinity Charge, and then Arceus V-Star is just a great all-around Pokemon. High HP, really good damage on Trinity Nova. Starbirth helps you get 2 cards of your choice to help you set up. Now keep in mind, if you're playing an Arceus-based variant of Goodra, you're most likely going to be using Starbirth over Moisture Star, so you're probably not going to get that healing that you normally would in an Goodra Lost Zone based deck. So keep that in mind, but you do get the benefit of Arceus just being a solid attacker, helping you set up potentially a little more consistently than a Lost Box version. And also you get the benefit of Sharon's Care. I'm skipping a little bit here. Sharon's Care, which can help you effectively heal an Arceus V-Star. You get to bring all of those cards, the evolution, the energy, any sort of tools, all back into your hand. And that can really screw your opponent over if they need to take certain prizes, they damage an Arceus, and you just heal it off the board and negate that turn, which is awesome. Arceus loves playing with Squovit and Beebrel as its draw engine of choice, so we have those here. And then we also see a couple control cards that are in here as well that I've started seeing more in Arceus lists in Japan. And the big one is Airy, where you get to look at your opponent's hand, choose 2 item cards you find there, and discard them. If you've already gotten set up and you're not necessarily looking to gust or hand disrupt, Airy can be a great way of disrupting your opponent, getting rid of any sort of key resources that they might need on the following turn. And you get to look at your opponent's hand and get some extra information that could help you win the game. This player also went with Misfortune Sisters, which isn't as popular in Arceus, but it kind of goes along the same lines as Airy, where here you get to look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and discard any number of items you find there. And then your opponent has to shuffle the deck and put any other cards that aren't items back in the deck. Again, just more disruption from Arceus on top of your heavy counts of Path to the Peak and Judge, and kind of compensating for your general lack of damage is just controlling your opponent's board a little more, disrupting them, not giving them the resources they need. I like it. Couple of other pieces to note here. We do see that Hero's Cape, which we could give to Goodra or Arceus. Arceus could get 380 HP, which can be absolutely ridiculous. And actually, that's kind of a cool combo there, because you can put it on the Arceus, on Arceus VSTAR, and then when it gets hit, you go and heal it with Sharon's Care, and then you can put the Hero's Cape on the Goodra instead. I just thought of that just now. That's actually kind of disgusting. I really like it. Some other cards that are worth noting in this deck: Vengeful Punch. So when your opponent knocks out your Pokemon, you get to drop 4 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. It can help offset the damage short that you might be from Arceus's attack and Goodra's attack. So really nice way of covering your bases on that front. V-Guard Energy is here as well. There's not going to be as many V-based attackers in the post-rotation meta, but there are still some out there, and when you've got this attached to an Arceus or Goodra or whatever, you're actually going to take 30 less damage from Pokemon V, making your Pokemon even tankier. Here's another take on Arceus Goodra, and this one actually techs in a 1/1 line of Vulpix V-Star. Now, I hope to get to a Arceus Vulpix video at some point, because this is actually, Arceus Vulpix as its own deck is actually very popular in Japan, and Vulpix is going to have a moment because its Snow Mirage attack is so good in a post-rotation meta, where it does 160 damage, it ignores effects of your opponent's Pokemon, it's going to shred through stuff like Mimikyu, and your opponent can't attack with a Pokemon that has an ability on the next turn. And there are so many meta-relevant attackers that have abilities like a Charizard, like a Chien-Pao, like a Goldengo, and they just can't hit through Vulpix. They have to get around it with a Prime Catcher or a Boss's Orders, but this can be an incredibly disruptive Pokemon, and especially with no Path to the Peak in the format where they can't shut off their own rule box Pokemon's abilities, this becomes even more oppressive than it was pre-rotation. This deck has some other cool tricks, such as Professor Turo's Scenario, where you get to put one of your Pokemon in play into your hand. Sort of works like Sharon's Care, but you have to discard the cards, but you can use this on anything. You can pick up Arceus, Goodra, Vulpix, or even Beebrill for that matter, but you can create some really messed up board states for your opponent. For example, if you're playing against an opponent who's got abilities on their attackers, if you can set up an Arceus V-Star and a Vulpix V-Star, and then you could Professor Turo's Scenario the Arceus out of play and only leave your board with just the Vulpix, and you Snow Mirage them, that's basically GG. They have no way of turning off their ability, and then they can't attack you, and then you just win, which is awesome. We also see Maximum Belt as the ace spec of choice. Lets you do 50 more damage to your opponent's Pokemon EX. Many of the meta-relevant attackers are going to be Pokemon EX, and that's going to push your breakpoints on Arceus and Goodra to the point where they are one-shotting many basic or like basic EXs, and even Vulpix could potentially get to a point where to 210 some of the basic EXs, but really for Arceus and Goodra, put the Maximum Belt on them and they're taking one-shots on those basic EXs and going to have a great time. This deck also has a defensive option in Box of Disaster, where if one of your Pokemon V gets knocked out from a single hit, you get to drop 8 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon, helping to compensate for the damage that you wouldn't get with an Arceus V-Star or a Goodra, because they're a little subpar in damage output, and this could help you cover the rest that your Arceus or Goodra could clean up afterwards. This list is a little older, but it's the only one I could find that actually just plays Goodra as its own deck. And we've got the Beebrill line to draw cards, and then we have Klefki and Mimikyu to stall for time. Klefki shuts off basic Pokemon's abilities, and Mimikyu prevents getting attacked from Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. So being able to stall for time there while you set up your Goodras is great, and you're going to be setting them up with TM Turbo Energize, where for only 1 energy, you can search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way you like, then shuffle your deck. So you're going to have Mimikyu or Klefki in the active, you're going to attach an energy to one of those, put the TM on, and then attach the extra energy off of the TM to a Goodra to get rolling that way. Helping us to get that TM is Arvin, where it lets you grab an item and a tool, helping you set up. And then, yeah, we got that Devolution card here as well, helping us deal with some of the bigger Pokemon like a Charizard, like a Gardevoir EX. Couple extra cards worth noting here, couple of Body Poffins to get our small Pokemon in play, Defiance Band to do extra damage when we're behind on prizes, the Hero's Cape to give our Goodras an extra 100 HP, and then for special energy, we have a combination of Jet Energy and Mist Energy. Mist Energy is going to prevent us from getting one-shotted by Star Requiem and Frenzied Gouging, and then Jet Energy can launch a Goodra into the active so that we can get the Klefki and the Mimikyu out of the way. This last list is not a Goodra list, but it does have Goodra teched into it. It's Chien-Pao, and I think Chien-Pao straight up is probably better, but if you're looking for a different way to play Goodra, this could be it. I get the logic here. Baxcalibur can power up the water energy, then you just attach metal energy from hand, and then Goodra gives you a tankier Pokemon with 270 HP. Not a lot of decks can one-shot a Goodra VSTAR straight up, and then you can use Rolling Iron, do solid damage, and because this deck does not have a VSTAR power, you can heal off the Goodra with Moisture Star, giving you an attacker that can survive multiple turns. Really interesting idea here. Definitely want to play with this one. And there we go. That is a look at Goodra VSTAR. The deck is on the rise in Japan. I'm seeing it more and more in the results, and I'm really looking forward to playing it post-rotation. But what say you? Are you excited for Goodra VSTAR? Which variant of Goodra do you want to play the most? Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at @InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at @InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, I've been sick for the last few weeks. Fingers crossed I can get back into it on the 17th. I'll let you know. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.